What situations in your life are causing that inner tug of war? That feeling of where do I go? Which decision do I make? Do you feel like you are experiencing that or can relate to it? You feel that dynamic tension, and when you look down, you realize there is no rope that you're holding on to. Today on Daphne V TV, we are talking about acceptance. I'm Daphne V, and I'm excited to spend the next little bit of time with you today. I remember learning this principle in regards to tug of war, that one way you can win is to simply let go of the rope. Now, you may not be holding on to a literal rope. In fact, if you are, what are you doing watching this? Pay attention to holding on. But we're talking about those times in life when we have the opportunity to accept something or to let it go. Here on Daphne V TV, the show for wave makers and chain breakers. If you are ready to start taking authorship of your life, stay tuned, because I'm going to give you permission to do that. Welcome again to Daphne V TV. I would like to know if you have ever felt like you've been in a struggle. Have you been faced with an opportunity where you've had to decide, I'm going to accept this or I'm not going to accept it? If you've ever experienced that tug of war, put that in the comments for me. Just type the word tug. I'd love to know if you can relate to this. Or maybe you know someone who is currently in a struggle. Feel free to share this with them so that they can get the 3 tips that I'm going to share in just a few minutes. I also would love to know in the comments where you're watching this from. You can be as broad or as specific as you like. Tell me what state, what city. If you want to be so detailed as to tell me, I'm watching from Phoenix, Arizona on the chair on my sun deck, kind of like the game Clue. Go for it. I want to know who I'm spending time with because I appreciate you and the time that you're spending with me right now. There are times in life when we have apparent choices to make. And, kind of with the state of the world, the way it is today, it seems like we are regularly presented with these choices, but I'm not going to go there right now. I'm going to try to behave. Instead, I want to give you some tips or maybe some guidelines that you can use when you have the opportunity to accept a situation or to not accept it. Because here's the reality. You always have a choice. Always, always, always. Can I get an amen and a comment in the chat? Always. Now, the choice is maybe not something that you're going to enjoy. Welcome, Ken from Kentucky. Great to have you with us. It may not be a choice that you enjoy. It may be kind of like the lesser of 2 evils, as the saying goes. The power that you have is the ability to make that choice. So use your power for yourself and take the time to, I'm going to give you my 3 tips in just a minute. Here's an example of what I'm talking about when it comes to accepting. And understand this. You cannot force someone else to accept something. I'll tell you about a recent scenario, a recent story. I had a discussion with a colleague earlier this very week, and he stated he was going to make someone promise that they wouldn't take an offer that was going to be made to them. I reminded that colleague of mine that he can't force someone else to accept something or to not accept it. That ultimately he, my colleague, needed to accept the fact that it was this other person's choice. And accepting that was what was important. So there are a lot of choices in life that other people will make that we don't agree with. And it's our choice to accept that or not. But what I want to do is I want to tell you right now 3 ways that you can decide if you're going to hold on, you're going to let go. So when it comes to accepting, number 1, starts with the letter C. Check in with yourself. What is your heart and what are your gut telling you to do? When you consider accepting a certain situation, a certain decision, a certain opportunity, or a certain person for that matter, what are your heart and your gut telling you to do? If you agree to accept it, what is that reaction, that visceral reaction, that internal reaction saying to you? You know, your body is going to understand well before your head ever does. So, number 1, check yourself. Check in with what is going on in your body at the moment. Number 2, imagine the best and worst case scenario. So number 1 is C, check yourself. Number 2 is I imagine the best and worst case scenario. When you are faced with an opportunity, a decision, a choice, what is the best outcome? What is the worst outcome? Which one will you be able to accept over the other? Number 3 starts with the letter A, assess. Assess other options. When you are presented with something, rarely are things at face value. Just like when buying a car. Trust me, what's on the sticker is not what they're going to sell it for. Okay? Most often, you have other options. When you go to a restaurant and they say no substitutions, really? No substitutions? If you don't ASK, you'll never GET. Even then, you may get a no. We don't make substitutions. Well, then you can choose to accept that or get up and go to another restaurant. You always have a choice. So assess what other options. Have you truly explored what your other options are? And if you have checked in with yourself, if you've imagined the worst case and best case scenario, and you've assessed all of your other options, right there, you're going to know if you need to accept something or if you need to let it go. Because let me tell you, when you employ the C.I.A. technique, which is not to be confused with C.Y.A., although there may be a tie-in there somehow. When you check, imagine, and assess, you're going to have insight into what you're willing to accept. Remember, wherever you go, there you are. So accepting begins right here. It begins with accepting yourself. It begins with accepting the consequences of your choices. For you to truly take authorship of your life, for you to break the chains and make the waves that need to happen in order for you to accept, you need to C.I.A. You need to check, imagine, and assess. And when you do, you will have, in addition to the power, you will have the permission to accept yourself.